Good evening. Welcome to a regular meeting of the Waterville City Council. We are here in person, and if anybody wants to stop down, you can come to Waterville High School. We're out back. Also, it looks like probably a lot of you are going to be joining us online. Before we get started, I will ask everybody to stand and we'll say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hey, look at that. Did you see those graphics? That's pretty awesome.
You're getting high tech.
Totally.
Starting to figure this out.
Okay. Disclosure of conflict of interest. Is there anybody on the city council who feels they'll have a conflict of interest with any of the votes they will take tonight? Seeing as none, we'll move on to the approval of the consent agenda. Could I get a motion for the approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
I think we still need to do a roll call.
Roll call.
Yeah.
Virtual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Sorry.
Whoa.
Councilor Morris?
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira?
Yes.
Councilor Smith?
Dad, we're going to the store, right? Or do you have to listen to this?
Councilor Smith?
You need to go to the store. Yeah, no.
You are. What's your vote on the consent agenda, Mayor?
Greg Bazakis, put yourself on mute, my friend.
Councilor Smith?
Yes.
Councilor Mayu?
Yes.
Councilor Foss?
Yes.
Councilor Frankie?
Yes.
Councilor Thomas?
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Unfinished business, ordinance 134, 2020.
I'm going to make a motion to take all of the items on the agenda by title only.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Nice.
Oh, we need a roll call.
Yeah, we'll do a roll call. Councilor Morris?
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira?
Yes.
Councilor Smith?
Yes.
Councilor Mayu?
Yes.
Councilor Foss?
Yes.
Councilor Frankie?
Yes.
Councilor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0
I don't think they're
opposed.
doing anything yet. No.
Ordinance
Okay.
134,
134, 2020.
an ordinance providing for amendment to zoning.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Is there discussion?
You want to just
I'm
sum
afraid
up?
that didn't come across. Would you have Patty read that again, please?
Yes.
It's ordinance 134, amendment to zoning.
And this is unfinished business from last time.
Okay. We'll take a roll call.
Councilor Morris?
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira?
Yes.
Councilor Smith?
Yes.
Councilor Mayu?
Yes.
Councilor Foss?
Yes.
Councilor Frankie?
Yes.
Councilor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Moving on, order 140, 2020.
An order providing for the issuance of general obligation bonds in the amount of $4,035,000 for capital projects.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to add an amendment to this to add back in the $250,000 for the firearm range for the police department.
Is there a second?
Second.
Open discussion on this item.
So, so I've had some time to talk with Chief and my own experiences with training in general. Police department needs an area to train in consistently, not once a year or once here and there. They need to be able to get that muscle memory into their bodies and react to a situation that they encounter. And in doing that, using this firearm range is going to give them that ability to react accordingly to whatever situation they come in contact with. I've toured the firearm range. I've talked with Chief Massey extensively about how we're doing this. Sound level testing has taken place. My own knowledge of sound levels, it is well within spec for what he had at the time, and now he's added even more berm to the area, so if anybody in the surrounding area is worried about noise or excessive noise from that area, I can assure you that the numbers that were tested before the berm was put up are extraordinary. But more importantly, this would give the police department.
Rick, sorry.
Excuse me?
I think it's just
I think
somebody
this
talking.
is Greg.
I thought I heard Rick, so. But anyways, that's, that's my stance on why we should be funding this in this bond is, the police need a place of their own to do their training effectively. And I've listened to what Winslow Range, yes, it's been great for them, place to train, but not to the caliber that Chief has laid out for this for the new place. What I'd be looking for down the road is to optionally, as long as everything falls into place, be able to open it up to the public with a membership fee. I don't know what that looks like right now, but at least we could recapture some of that revenue, some of that money spent going forward. As long as the numbers worked right, great. But if not, then so be it. But that's why I'm in favor of this.
I just have a question.
Can we mute anyone who's not a counselor?
Right, can we mute, that's Eric's phone.
SAKK, Women Kyle, University, 1995, 1985, 1795, 1795.
Sounds better.
That sounds a lot better.
Yep.
Thank you, Patty.
Yeah.
Are we throwing you a welcome back party, Patty? We'll do it the same time we do your going away party.
Okay.
So, yeah, I just have a question. Like, I don't have any issues with the range at all, and I'm happy to put the money back in here. I guess I'm trying to understand is, what is the total cost? So, 100,000 last year, 250 this year. Does that give you a finished product? Like, what's the end game to make this a range that's useful, beyond what, you're looking to do now, and just, a bunch of hills with some sound testing and things like that? What's the overall scope of that? Yeah, that's fine.
Use that mic.
I think it was already on.
It doesn't really
All right.
amplify your voice.
No, yeah.
No. I had the city engineer come up with some rough estimates of what it would cost. And if an outside contractor was to do the whole complete project from start to finish, he estimates that to be about $340,000. If in fact Public Works can do either all of the project or part of it, they will reduce that cost. If Public Works could do all of it, we don't think they can, it would be about $142,000. But there's just some large equipment that's needed, large bulldozers, and really an expertise on how to use them. We think Public Works should come in and do a lot of the finish work for the range, so definitely with that $350,000, we could complete that range.
So there's no structure, like when you came the first year for the 100,000, we had the, and I'm assuming it's still in the same location. There was a big thing that we showed, you guys are shooting this way, and we're going to do this, and is there any, like, I know that there was talk for like maybe, or, you know, hopes for like buildings and things of that nature. Does any of that money, is there any of that, or is this literally just to create enough hill of a berm so that you guys can fire into it and you guys can set up things to do all outdoor stuff? I mean, I know most of the things are gonna be outdoor, but I know that, you know, like for a meeting room to go ahead and you know, decipher things that happened, or, you know, whatever, debriefing, or, you know, whatever you wanna call it. Is that part of this initial plan, or is that, you know, plan two?
Well, we're hoping that if we don't spend the whole $350,000, we can put a structure on it. Because it'll be a simple rectangular structure, do some classrooms, some storage and that type of thing. That can come after if we have to do that. But we're hoping if we have enough money left over that we could in fact put that structure up there. That's really the only other piece of the project. The rest of it is all the range itself. As you know, we had I don't know how many yards, probably two, I'm not sure how many yards, that we had hauled in from some of the construction projects around the city, including the Colby construction for the athletic field, that they were good enough to haul all that fill down there, and we were able to get a berm on the north side of the pool, so we'll be shooting north, about 30 feet high, which is what's recommended. And of course, then it has some natural berms on the east side, which is the side that faces the West River Road. And then, of course, on the opposite side is the river.
Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to get at, like, just like a picture in my head, like, at the end game, you know, like, 100,000 this year, 250 this year, like, as this thing evolves, then, you know, we're now 6-7 years down the thing, and now we've got, you know, 900,000, $1.2 million range, which that's great. Like, I'm just trying to see what the end game is. Like, what at the end of the day, if you could have everything that you wanted to make this range what it was, what's that cost going to be? Instead of just coming out and saying, okay, well, 250, 150, now another 130, we're going to do this and this. I mean, I get it, but I'm just trying to see, like, overall end game from field to finish, if we have a plan and what that
Well, as I said before, we've been trying to develop or get a range for the last several years. And 4 or 5 years ago, we decided that the only city-owned property that was feasible for that were the pools on the West River Road.
Right.
And so from that point on, we started to look where we could get fill, free fill. We had the city engineer at that time estimate at what it would cost to bring in all that fill if we paid for it, based on the height and the length and the width that you need. And he estimated back then at about $350,000 if we had to pay for all that fill to be hauled in. We had it all hauled in for nothing. So we saved all that money. The first money that we had to dedicate towards the range was last year's bonding of $100,000.
Right.
We spent about $18,000 in engineering fee from Ransom Engineering Firm. But that came out of forfeiture money. And we wanted to keep the whole $100,000 to actually use towards the project. So the additional $250 that we would get, which certainly was well within the estimate of what the city engineer came up with for a rough estimate just last week. So we think we could finish that project.
Okay.
Including your classroom and your Connex box?
Well, I'm hoping that we could finish the classroom. Again, that's kind of a rough estimate, so, you know, if we obviously came in at 300 or 325, we'd probably have enough to construct that building. Again, a rectangular building, nothing fancy, just to have classroom and hold and some storage area.
Okay.
Chief, how many days a year do you think there will be training going on at the range?
For us, we train about 6 days of mandatory training, and then the officers shoot as often as they can, and they'll shoot more often if we have our own range. Got to remember that firearms skills are very perishable. If you don't keep them up, you lose them. And as I said many, many times, we do a lot of dynamic shooting, a lot of tactical shooting. We use stacking, we use rescue techniques to bring back an officer who's been shot or injured, or a civilian. Obviously dynamic entries. And so we need a much bigger area than what the Winslow Range provides for us. And again, we don't have access during the wintertime for the Winslow Range, but if we hire someone in January, February, we gotta.
Where do you currently go to do the kind of training that you can't do in Winslow, or do you just not do it?
Well, we are doing it in Winslow, but it's very difficult, and it's downsized, and some of the training that we want to do, we actually aren't doing because it's just not quite big enough. Some of it is actually erecting barriers so that we can shoot around corners, we can simulate going down hallways, clearing rooms, and all those types of things that make it very difficult when you have to tear everything down because it's not our range and then set it back up, and that takes time, and of course, to get all our people qualified, we work 24/7, so there's people at night that are shooting, we do night firing.
Other than Winslow, what municipalities around here have their own range for their police department?
I don't know of, maybe Scarborough. Augusta uses Capitol Range. I don't think there's any police department north of Waterville that has a range.
So where would you, if the council was to say no, where would you go to do the training? And if Winslow no longer became an option, have you looked into what your options would be for where you could go to do this kind of training?
I'm not sure. I have not, but our options certainly would be limited. We could see what they would cost if, in fact, the Capitol Range would even consider taking us on.
I mean, here's my concern. You know, we talked about this last year, and last year we put $100,000 in the bond to invest in the range. Correct me if somebody who was there, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember ever discussing any additional, that we were going to need more than the $100,000. And so we're going to take. Did we?
My recollection is that when the chief asked for the initial funds, it was to get certain things started, and it was a pretty rough outline of some beginning stages.
Right, and so maybe I misremember it was, but my concern is we're taking something that currently is costing us $600 a year and turning it into if we just stayed at the 100 from last year and the additional 250 this year, we're turning it into a $20,000 a year expense for the next 20 years.
Right.
When we have a fire department that's in need of repair, and a library we're just kept catching up on, and public works equipment that we're trying to catch up on. So I'm not opposed to it, but in my mind I'm trying to justify making this, you know, taking something that's only costing us $600 and turning it into, you know, an expense that's much more than that.
Can I comment, Chief?
Oh, yeah.
I would justify it by saying that there's no police department in the area that trains like the Waterville PD, and even when surrounding towns, when our folks have gotten called into active shooter situations, there's nobody that understands how to navigate those the way the Waterville PD does, specifically because of the way the chief has worked over the years to train them. And I think when we're talking about the fact that these guys do go into active shooter situations, and they're putting their life on the line, I think that's the justification, is to make sure they're as best and highly trained as possible.
I guess my question would be, for $20,000, could we just afford to pay to send them to a good facility where they can do that kind of training, rather than, or for some amount less than $20,000 a year? I mean, what would it cost us to just pay the expenses to send you to some place where you can do the kind of training you want to do?
Well, there's no substitute for training when it comes to firearms. It exposes us to the most liability, not to mention someone getting hurt or someone getting killed. And the type of training that we need for our community, I think we need our own range, a much larger range, and one that we can do the full scope of training that we really need to do. Depending on where we would go, if this range is not constructed, I'm not sure where we would go, but again, we're talking 24/7, people working nights. Are they gonna have to travel an hour 2 hours. You know, a lot of that obviously is overtime cost for us to train all the folks as many times as we do a year. So it'd be, you know, be significant, but, and difficult for us to do that. Yeah.
Is training in Augusta not an option anymore?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Training in Augusta, is that not an option anymore?
The Capitol, wherever the Augusta,
Could we train there?
wherever the Augusta
Yeah.
Police Department is going, I guess.
Well, I'm not sure. I would have to contact them and ask them if in fact they would allow us to use that for our training. How many times a year could we use it? It's open to the public. Would it be difficult scheduling for us? Could we get the amount of time and scheduling that we need? And then, of course, what the cost is. And again, it's a 40-mile round trip to go ahead and train our folks. So logistically, not good.
Well, and I do think we should keep in mind just the long-term prospects of, even if it's several years down the road, of being able to partner with the community and gun clubs and things like that to perhaps help with this.
This gets, I'm sorry, Mr.
Sid.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, like Council Foss, I want to reiterate my support to put this back in because I have a godson that's been on the Skowhegan Police Department for a while. And I hear the stories about domestic violence on a first-hand basis because he visits with me quite often. And I can't tell you, you know, like Chief Massey said, this training in a modern-day firearm range is so necessary during the days that we are looking ahead to. We live in an age where, you know, many officers' lives are in danger on quite more occasion than not. And seeing some of the situations he has been in as an officer and as a training officer as well, in situations where he's in charge of somebody else, it's just mind-blowing the amount of training that is needed to have competent officers out there and protecting the public on a constant basis and meeting challenges that come out in the domestic world that we live in so much every day. So I got to say that, you know, this is, you know, you can't put a money or a price on saving lives and being proactive in reinforcing a police department and their training. So I definitely support this.
Just one,
Did we lose the Zoom meeting?
Yeah.
Go. All right. Anybody else for commentary on the shooting range?
anyone from the public?
Anybody from the public?
I call the question.
Well, we have to let public commentary first. So we're not going to vote on that question right now. And it also takes me a minute because I have to look up there because you guys won't come in, and I've got to look around here too. So be a little patient. Any comments from the public? And there's one.
Jay.
I think Jay wants to say something.
Yep.
Chief, we got a chance to catch up this morning. I've had a chance to talk to my counselor. And we touched a little bit on this, and Mayor Isgro also did. Would you accept that 250 or whatever it is that you're looking for now contingent on a public option where we could pay dues to go?
Yes.
Which would be a way that we could make money to recoup some of that 20 grand. And we could offer that same service that we pay to Winslow to other municipalities, so they'd come use our range also?
Could.
Good evening, Kathy Weeks, Ward 1. I have a couple of questions. 20 years ago, probably the Waterville Police Department did not need such a force that they have now. As a matter of fact, Chief, I think you need more officers with the things that you are dealing with on a daily basis here in Waterville. It's changed drastically. Right now, with the crisis that we're in this state, and next year, the lack of revenue sharing, we do need to cut budgets. And there are things in the budget currently that are unnecessary to spend. But for $250,000, and what this will do for our police force, which now more than ever, they need to be ready to go at any time with the climate we're in. Somehow we need to cut something else out in that budget. Residents cannot endure another tax increase this year at all. And I do agree with Jay's suggestion about the ranges up and running, then memberships, and that would be a revenue source also. So I'm asking the councilors, please put this back in. Please cut other things that are not necessary at this time. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tom Dupre from Ward 6. I support the creation of the police firing range. I'm somewhat familiar with the Capital City rifle and pistol range in Augusta, and that range is booked solid from September through November every year, and state police do training on a weekly basis. It's very busy, and it's difficult to schedule range time around the state police and the Criminal Justice Academy. So I do believe the Waterville Police Department needs a facility of their own where they can train adequately for the tasks that they face on a frequent basis. So I'd ask you to support the creation of the firing range. And it's also possible you could rent memberships when the police aren't there to help defray the cost. I know people pay it's at least $50 to $60 a year at Capital City, and there are other ranges out of state where people pay significantly more. So it is a perishable skill, and I support the police. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing that there is no further questions or comments from the public, I will call for a roll call. And again, a yes vote is to add the 250 back for the police range. A no vote would be to not add it back.
Councilor Morris?
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira?
No.
Councilor Smith?
No.
Councilor Mayu?
Yes.
Councilor Foss?
Yes.
Councilor Frankie?
No.
Councilor Thomas?
Well, I'm going to vote yes. All I want to say, Chief, is I would be interested to hear what Capital Shooting Club has to say before we actually start spending money.
The vote is 4 in favor and 3 opposed.
Yes.
Should we move it as amended?
Let's deal with all the amendments first.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Good. Open for other amendments.
I'd like to talk about the pool. Matt, could you bring me up to speed, wrap my head around where those numbers are?
I'm gonna offer other amendments first, before we move it.
Where the numbers are existing right now, the current numbers are for the pool. When we don't figure in either debt service or the maintenance reserve that's kind of in debate right now, we're at about $83,000 a year to run the pool and at about $88,000 in revenue. So we are, over the past few years only, have we broken even or made a profit. Historically, over the last 15 or 20 years, it was a big loser, upwards of between $15,000 and $25,000 a year, which is typical in the municipal pool business. It's unheard of to break even or turn a profit at a municipal pool. I don't believe there are any in the state that do.
Okay. Question that I have about the construction of a new pool. Are you mitigating the bed that pool sits on? I went and looked at it the other day, and it's cracking right along the seam at the top, seeing that the tub is basically sinking into the ground. And I know that that's sitting on a silt bed with a clay underneath that, and plus the amount of structure that we had to put in the ground for the slides gives that away as well. What's your mitigation so that we don't have to come back in 10 years and redo this all over again?
I think we're in very good shape there. As part of the preliminary engineering that Weston and Sampson did when we hired them to do this, to do more work around the major pool, we had SW Cole come in and they did 6 or 8 full borings all around the pool. So as far as mitigating it, we know what the soils are, we know what they'll withstand. The system that we're proposing is called Mertha. Dozens of pools in the Northeast in similar soils have been put in, and it's proven to be the answer, really. It was the most expensive of the 3 options that we got from Weston and Sampson. It was only slightly more than the other 2, but as far as durability and guarantees and warranties, it was the one to go with. It's proven. It's been around, I think, for about 15 years now. And we will use the existing tub, as you refer to it, with these custom fit stainless liners that are put in that deserve or require little to no maintenance.
It's a completely different construction than the pool that's there now.
Okay.
And I mean, they said it'll last 40 years, which I don't believe, but I think it'll get us 20 years for sure.
Talk me through Mertha. Is that a styrofoam blocking system that would float?
No, it's stainless steel.
It's stainless, so you're inserting that inside the tub that's currently there?
Yeah.
And then how are you attaching that to the rest of the structure? Because I know you have the spillway that goes around the rim.
Yep, the gutter line, and yep, it's all stainless. There is insulation in between as a buffer between the existing shotcrete and the stainless. So there's a layer of insulation and other stainless posts.
Okay. Is there a fear that the weight of the water will sit in the stainless tub and then be supported by the concrete structure that's currently there?
Correct.
So you're doing a bath liner.
To simplify things.
Right.
That's the idea.
Okay.
All new plumbing, all new pumps, almost all new concrete decking. So it's much more than a Band-Aid or putting lipstick on.
Right.
It's going to be a quality situation if we're lucky enough to get through this.
After the debt service is done and all other fees, what's our in the red number? Do we have that?
No, I didn't figure that. I didn't figure the debt. We can do it. I can do the numbers if you give me a second. So if we figured in the 60K debt service, and Mike, the last we had understood is that we would figure in 25 for the payback.
Correct.
So that's 85. And next year we're proposing. Can you guys help me a little bit? So 85, Eric, if you would, plus 117.
Well,
is what we're proposing with the rate fee increases.
85 plus 117?
Yeah.
Would
about a little over 200.
A little over 200.
Yeah. With our expenses, again, our expenses right now are 83,000. Those aren't going to go down over time either.
Nope.
So I'm not going to.
Nope.
Yeah.
And you're making 88 right now without the debt service.
Correct, correct.
And then you're gonna throw on another 60,000 a year debt service.
Well, I don't
that
know if that's
operational
exactly
cost.
how we're gonna do it, but we can look at it that way to
Right,
see.
right,
what
just
the
rough
true-
numbers.
What the true.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I just want to say something about the municipal pool. In the beginning, like I said at the last meeting, I had a sticking point, which I explained to both Matt and Mike Roy about the allocated money that the city would be obligated to. The Alphon Association obviously kicking in a good amount of the money. I do believe, my constituency has spoken to me and has been 100% supportive of investing in the pool. It is an asset that I know of growing up. I actually had my first swimming lessons there as a kid, and I know
That pool.
it was.
It was back when it was a real.
Well, it was, but I can still remember training there as a kid, and as I do many of my people that I graduated back a long time ago that used the pool for those types of purposes. I mean, I went on to become a Boy Scout and did my additional training there, but I definitely remember the lessons that I took there, and they were very memorable. The sticking point that was for me was, again, thinking outside the box of having to come up with a reserve account of $50,000 all the time. And I put to task, obviously to Matt and to Mike, to negotiate to try to half that. And I was pleasantly surprised over the last couple days that they did achieve that milestone of cutting that allocation in half. And that sticking point no longer is for me. So that is the reason why I have warmed to the fact not only my residents in my ward have emailed me and had correspondence with me, but the fact that I want to give a great deal of commendation to Matt Skehan for his aggressive business plan that he has given to all the councils to look at, the marketing plan that he has outside of the box, that he's going to do his very best. And if anybody as a department head can do something with this type of thing, I have complete confidence in Matt that you can do that.
Thank you.
With your team, obviously. I always want to say the people behind you are as important as the person in front. And you certainly have proven that over the course of time too. And Mike, I do applaud you for your efforts and your expertise in dealing with the Alphon Association and getting them to understand where the city lies as far as financial standpoint. And I think this is a project that can move forward and it will be beneficial. And if it's managed correctly from a business standpoint, to the best of our ability, I think we can do better than break even for the first time, be the first in the state. That would be a headliner in itself. And let's think about the generation today and future generations and make this happen.
Rick, and then.
So Matt, I do like the numbers, and I just want to get some clarity in my head as far as what we're looking at. Like the police range, I have a solution that would work for me. Would you be opposed to having kind of an oversight committee, a Friends of the Pool oversight that would give two citizens, two counselors, and of course yourself on that? Would you be open to that option?
Absolutely. Right now, we have a recreation committee, so I think that it could be in some form members of the recreation committee, of which we have Councilor Smith, Oliveira, and Mr. Morris.
Okay.
So yes, I would be willing to.
And I think so there is a citizen, we talked to the same person who would like to start a Friends of the Pool group. I don't know that it has to even be set up as an official, necessarily like if it has to have counselors on it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I think it could be more like Friends of Quarry Road or Friends of, where you're it's really those private partners.
The people that have the passion, the real passion, not the force, not dumping more work on people that don't really care, it's not going to work as well.
Right.
So you're right. It's the people that really want to help for the right reasons.
Yeah.
It could be
this person that me and the mayor are talking about, very passionate about it.
Just to hear who it is.
Yeah.
So
that would gain my vote for it if you're open to that.
Absolutely. All the help we can get.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Matt, and your team, having seeing the business plan has been phenomenal. And, you know, one of the things when I came to the first, you know, recreation committee is just, you know, what kind of things, what can we do to enhance the experience of the people that go there? And, you know, I think this is a fantastic start. It certainly gets us, you know, I think more in the game. And, you know, I think it'll put us in a position where, you know, we're going to be able to hopefully, you know, start, you know, turning more of a profit and more opportunities to, you know, to enhance, you know, those experiences for the people, you know, now and in the future, and really attract more people to come here and not only spend the day at the pool, then go to a restaurant or, you know, and take in the show or, you know, spend the hotel, like whatever. Like there's going to be lots of things to do, you know, here. And I think, again, this is a great start. And, you know, I look forward to continuing enhancing this even more and just seeing what that potential is. I think the potential is great for this particular project. So, yeah, I'm excited.
Yep, thanks.
So that wasn't really a motion, so we don't need to vote on that.
Nope.
It's already in there.
You might as well stay right there. And talk about public works. We're going to talk about public works.
Oh, okay, all right.
So I wanted to move on to talk about public works. I don't know if everybody,
Sorry, just for anyone that's watching from the public, this entire bond package will be open for public commentary. There wasn't actually a motion on the floor there, so that's why we didn't invite public commentary on that specific item. But if you have commentary on any of the items we talk about, we will make sure that there's that opportunity at the end. So I want just people to know that, so in case they're restless.
So I forwarded, Mark Turner had sent us this document, I think last week or the week before, and I forwarded it to everyone again this afternoon, so it would be easy for people to find. It's always eye-opening when you see these numbers. So what I wanted to talk about was the items that are not currently included in this bond, but Mark had originally requested for year 2. And if you look at the numbers, I mean, for example, one of the items is a plow truck that originally cost us $190,000, and we spent $152,000 repairing that truck. And then you look just down, there's another plow truck that's 2 years newer than that one that at this point has cost us $70,000 to repair. I mean, and I have a hunch, and I emailed Matt about this afternoon, that, you know, when these vehicles hit 10 years of life, they start costing us a lot more money in repairs, and that's money that we can't avoid. You know, if these things break down, obviously we have to plow the roads, so we have to fix them. And in a lot of cases, it looks like the repairs are actually costing us more than the debt service on a new piece of equipment would cost. I mean, you look further down, there's another similar truck that's a 2013 that so far has only cost us $37,000 in repairs. And again, as that vehicle ages, those repairs are going to get more and more expensive. And, you know, I don't think, in this case, I don't think it saves us money by not replacing this equipment. I think it actually ends up costing us money in the long run. And we need to get on a much better, more consistent schedule replacing this equipment. I mean, besides the cost of maintenance, there's also the lost productivity for public works when these pieces of equipment are broken. You know, and that affects certainly not being able to adequately clear the roads or the sidewalks, for example. That costs people commerce. If people can't drive to a business, they can't patronize that business. And so, and I'd only like to have your thoughts, Matt, on the Packer truck, which was also part of Mark's request for year 2. What are your thoughts on how necessary that is? I know that's just meant to be a backup vehicle. It would seem to me that that's one we can maybe wait on, but you're more familiar with the condition of that piece of equipment.
I'm not as familiar as I'd like to be right now, but I think that it is something that these are tough times, so it is something that we could probably kick down the road a little bit longer. That would be my opinion on that. Yeah. Again, I think the winning model for maintenance is just what Councilor Thomas is talking about. With these vehicles, these costs are real. You guys and ladies know it. It's to have a plan, a concise plan for bonding every few years and letting go of that fleet that's aging is something we really have to look at. We have our fleet maintenance folks over in the mechanics garage. We have a file on every single piece of equipment, which is great, because when we run these numbers, we're pulling out the invoices for parts and labor on each one of them. So I can say that I like the direction that you're trying to get folks, because it's important in the long haul.
My other question, Mike, it shows on here, or I think it was on another thing to do with the bond, that it would be a public works equipment. They allow us to borrow that money for a 15-year term. But it seems like most of this equipment is pretty worn out by the time it hits year 10. And so the last thing I want to do is be borrowing money and then replacing equipment when we're still paying off equipment, you know, that we borrowed money for before. I know none of these pieces of equipment fall into that category because our last outstanding bond is from 2011. And the newest piece of equipment we'd be talking about is from 2010, so it looks like these are all paid off. Is there an option for us? Do the bond agencies set the term, or is there a chance for us to say, you know what, we don't really want to drag 15 years out on these pieces of equipment, we'd rather pay them off in 10?
No, we can determine that. Right. We can determine the lifespan of anything we borrow money for and set that up so that it's paid by, if it's a 10-year lifespan, it's paid before year 10, and so on. So that's really under our control.
Okay. With that, I'm going to make a motion to amend the bond and add $380,000 to the public works line to replace the 2 plow trucks.
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah.
Sid?
What is the original 585 buying for equipment as needed now?
I can tell you, I've got it in front of me. It's a dual axle dump sander plow truck, HD loader with a hookup assembly for snow blower, single axle dump sander plow truck, and a skid steer loader.
So
it's 2 plow trucks, the loader and I guess 2 loaders and one with the assembly for a snow blower.
And then my other concern is that we're likely not going out to bond for another 2 years. Yeah. And so if we don't replace these 2 plow trucks this year, we're looking at 2 more years of maintenance on these trucks before we replace them, before we have a chance to likely replace them.
Well, I could further attest to what Eric is saying as far as the plow fleet is concerned, and I've said something at previous meetings with Mark Turner, and I can attest to the fact that I've firsthand witnessed many a breakdown of the plow trucks in front of my house, you know, on several roads that I've been traveling.
Is that when they took out your mailbox?
Yeah, the one that took out my mailbox twice over 5 years. Because, you know, for obviously various reasons, the operator and the machine itself. But I can definitely tell you that the plow trucks that we have are deteriorating rapidly. Snow, anybody can attest that lives in Waterville, you're waiting longer than you ever have to see your road plowed on a consistent basis because of breakages and breakdowns of equipment. I mean, you've seen the plow itself detached from the truck, which is a major thing, to have it detached from the truck and to bring that back to the shop and have that put back on or welded back on is a major thing. And residents expect a certain level of services for what they pay for in taxes. And certainly the Public Works has been on the ropes for a long time, as we know, as a council, for coming up with surplus and padding the budget, you know, to soften the blow. And we know that that's been a historical thing. Certainly in their hour, in their time of need, I can understand the plow truck theory and what's been put and proposed for maintaining that fleet and having a significant essential service on the road. So I do sympathize with that.
Given the total value of all of our stuff at Public Works, we have to really, if we're going to repair it in a timely way, spend anywhere from $500,000 to $700,000 a year, every year, to replace equipment that continually gets worn out. We lost quite a few of those years when the Great Recession hit in 2008 to 2015, when we really, for Maine anyway, started to come out of it. So for many of those years, 7, 8 years, we didn't do anywhere near what we should have. So we're still in a pretty big catch-up game. Mark Turner's done a great job keeping track of expenses incurred. So I know when Councilor Thomas looked at that, it was evident that some of the stuff we're paying repairs more than we would cost appear to buy it over a 10-year period or over a 15-year period. So we're trying to catch up. I appreciate your motion. If we don't do it this year, the additional amount, we're certainly going to be having to look at it very seriously in a year or two at the most.
I think so.
And when we get to that point, if it's 2 years, it's not going to be 500,000. It's going to be a lot more if we want to do it right.
Councilor Foss.
This is not pertaining to the amendment, but it's part of Public Works. I've heard reports that Colby is going to house 200 students in the hotel for a 2021 season.
100, I believe.
Under that pretext, when the bill grant $1 million was added to the bond, we were looking at recouping some of that TIF money to use towards that portion of the debt service. If they put 100 kids in that building for 2021, would that not reduce their tax burden?
No.
I would just, as a point of order here, ask that we continue on with the discussion about the Public Works equipment and bring that up as its own item.
Good enough.
Is there anybody else, and I'm looking on the screen, that would like to comment on the Public Works, on this? There is a motion on the floor to add, what was it, 380?
380.
$380,000 for 2 new plow trucks. Seeing as there's no commentary from the council, I will just wait a moment to see if there is any member of the public that would like to offer a comment on the 2 plow trucks before we take a vote.
Are we doing are we doing the rest of the bond items and then one whole thing? Or is there anybody who wants to do any amendments on any of the departments? Or
well, but we're going to have to take a vote on this amendment now.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yep, good point. Thank you.
I'm just giving it one more minute because they're a little delayed in the next room.
What is it?
All right, I think we're ready for a roll call.
Councilor Morris?
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira? Councilor Oliveira?
You're muted.
Yes, sorry.
Councilor Smith?
Yes.
Councilor Mayu?
Yes.
Councilor Foss?
No.
Councilor Frankie?
No.
Councilor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 5 in favor and 2 opposed.
And the amount, just to confirm, that was?
380,000 for the 2 plow trucks, Mike.
Are there any other amendments to discuss before we move this as amended? Okay, could I get a motion to move as amended?
So moved. Second.
Now, is there any overall discussion? I think this would be a good time for you to have your discussion on that.
Yeah, so we've got we added the 1 million for the bill grant, with the 100 kids being housed in the 2021 session of school. And Mr. Roy, you can give me some info or not. Thomas, you as well. Is that tax going to change for them as a liability on that TIF that that was the premise, was we threw the $1 million on there thinking we were going to make, $60,000.
They haven't requested any change in the tax status of that building. It's meant to be this is just a temporary stopgap measure to get them through this year.
Right, but we're still looking at it, we're still gonna, if they came forward.
I believe the taxable value for this year is $3 million, given the completion of the project as of April 1st. And so, I mean, unless they somehow, like all of a sudden decided they were gonna turn it into a permanent dorm and come back to us.
Well, that's my general, because up until now, my scope.
We'd have
Right, which is not-
revolt if they did that.
Is not their intention.
We rebelled.
And the necessity is because a lot of their students who would be overseas are gonna be here.
Yeah.
And they're also honestly, they might have some kids who choose not to come back this year.
Yep.
So I don't think they're completely sure they actually need to use the hotel, but that's their contingency plan if they need extra housing.
Okay.
So
I agree with.
And you agree that it's definitely going to be taxed? They won't ask for a tax exemption because it's being used for charitable purposes if they decide to use it for housing for students the first year?
I can't guarantee that. I don't know that. I haven't heard it.
We should ask them before we actually do the bond.
Is that status, you say, I think, did you just say they ask for a change in the status? Is that something that we have the ability to approve or no, or they just apply and that it is what it is because that's what they're doing? Like, how would that work?
It's entirely a matter decided by the city assessor.
Oh.
If they meet certain criteria for student housing, long-term, I think that would be the key, then he would have to consider that. But I think the key is short-term versus long-term.
I saw Councilor Frankie, and then we're going to go to Councilor Mayhew after him.
We've been kicking that bonding around for an hour now, and it appears to me that there have been more questions raised than answers given. I'm going to move that we table this until our next meeting.
Is there a second on that? No second, the motion dies. I do agree that we should probably wrap this up soon. Councilor Mayhew.
Yeah, I just want to remind people about, the amount of the bond. Obviously, it's gone up a little bit, but the amount of the $4,035,000 bond as is, without the additions, I want to remind people, as I've had discussions, and I know the councilors are in full realization of this, but maybe the public isn't, because I've had to field questions from my constituents, and I want to be honest with all clarity, is that 3 items on this total almost $2 million of the $4 million, $35,000 bond here, because we're talking about the Trafton Road of $500,000, which we are obligated to the Maine DOT for the construction work on the off-ramp from 95. We are obligated from the build grant, which was done by U.S. Senator Susan Collins, gracefully taking, taking the time to formulate and get us a $10 million grant that would revitalize the entire downtown of Waterville, which is really only happens once in a lifetime. Our obligation to that is $1 million, and of that $1 million, we would end up using $1 million in just paving alone the side streets after the full construction is done, which would be our skin in the game. So in the airport as well, FAA grants are tied to the $300,000 we're being asked to repave the entire runway, which is in dire need of being redone. These are all things that are economically viable assets that we have to protect. The Trafton Road is a beautiful area that's going to be an economic boom. The downtown is another area that we're going to see our local economy thrive, and merchants are going to thrive, and entrepreneurs are coming to do business there. We are the talk of the state of Maine in the city of Augusta, from what I've heard on a number of occasions from not only lobbyists but politicians themselves. And certainly the airport is a viable hub that we want to maintain and sustain so that we can have the commerce and we can have even more economic revitalization coming in and out of that airport, and we need to maintain these things. So of the bond, I want to be all clarity, half of it is money that we are obligated as a municipality to come up with in partnership with others. So I just wanted to add that in.
Okay. Any other questions or comments before we have a vote? All right, we'll open this up to the public. for commentary on the bond before there's a vote on the entire bond package.
Are there emails flowing in?
We'd all be getting them if.
Oh, okay.
No.
Go.
I was just making sure that we had time for the delay, but I think we're good. We'll go for a roll call.
You want the Wi-Fi?
Counsel Morris?
Just to be, this is for the amendments, right, that we're adding?
This is on the entire
The
bond
entire
package.
bond
Sure.
package as amended.
Thank you. Yes.
Counselor Oliveira?
So this is for the entire bond
Yep.
With the amendments.
With the amendments.
with the amendments, yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Mayu?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
No.
Counselor Frankie?
No.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 5 in favor and 2 opposed.
Okay. Moving on to new business, we have ordinance 143, 2020.
An ordinance providing for amendment to the zoning ordinance.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Discussion.
Just to be clear, this is to create a new zone, solar farm zone.
Yeah, Counselor Foss?
Can you explain why we need this?
This goes back to the discussion we had. You remember there was an item where we were asked to allow solar farms in both rural residential and airport industrial zones. And at that time, the discussion, at least on my behalf, was that we shouldn't just blanket allow solar farms in any rural residential zone, that each one of those should be taken up on a case-by-case basis. This allows us to take a look at each of those cases and rezone it to solar farm specifically for that use.
And that's kind of what we're doing anyways? Now we're just adding another layer of another option to rezone to?
No, I mean, you'd have to, in order to allow the solar farm in a rural residential zone, you would either have to amend the zoning for the rural residential, or we'd have to rezone it to airport industrial. If you rezoned it to airport industrial, then it would open you up to all of the uses that are allowed in airport industrial.
True story.
So what this is doing is saying, okay, we've decided it's okay on your rural property to do a solar farm, but it doesn't open you up to any other industrial uses.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this specific item?
I would just make a motion to amend so that the setbacks in the rural residential zone where it's rezoned solar would be changed from 30 feet from the side and back property lines to 50 feet from the side and back property lines. And then the language also says that you have to be at least 250 feet from a house. So it would be whichever, you'd be governed by whichever is more, but I think it should be at least 50 feet from the property line. That gives a little more of a buffer to people who might abut these properties. So that was an offer for an amendment.
Second.
Okay, that motion is open for discussion.
I had asked Ann about this. The next time on the agenda, I had gone up and met with Mr. Sweat today. And so I asked her about ways that we could maybe perhaps deal with his concerns. And one of the concerns was the proximity to the property line. And Ann suggested that we should overall, rather than doing something special, we should just make it a part of the overall zone. And that then it would apply to any other places that get rezoned as well.
This is strictly regarding solar farms
Right.
in rural residential.
It doesn't really say it's, it doesn't say in rural residential, this is the creation of the district as an option, which then people technically could go to the planning board no matter where they are and ask that it get rezoned to this zone once this zone is created.
But there's less of a setback requirement in the airport industrial zone, for example.
Yeah, but that airport industrial is surrounded by not residential area.
Right,
which is why we've got two more ordinances here coming up that are right up against that, and that's why I'm asking, you know,
well,
where I get it.
Because what the next two will do is rezone those parcels to solar farm if they are approved.
Yep.
So this is defining that type of zoning, and then the next question is whether those parcels actually get rezoned, which is a separate question. But what I'm saying is 20-foot setback in the airport industrial zone is probably fine because there's no one that you're going to bother next to you. But in the rural residential zone, I feel like if you're going to put a solar farm in and the city council says it's okay, then you should have a little more setback from the property line. So that's what my amendment is for.
Okay. So, I'm going to ask for a roll call on the amendment, which is to amend the setback from 30 feet to 50 feet on side and rear property lines.
Mm-hmm. All set?
All set.
Councilor Morris?
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira?
Yes.
Councilor Smith?
Yes.
Councilor Mayu?
Yes.
Councilor Foss?
Yes.
Councilor Frankie?
Yes.
Councilor Thomas?
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
And I'll move the ordinance as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on the ordinance in general. Any commentary from the public on the creation of this?
Nobody's moving. I can see Sarah.
Yes, sir.
May I speak to that?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Violet.
Oh, you want to come to the violet, sorry.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Violet. I represent the project on County Road, which is a 20-acre solar farm for Derigo Solar over there. I put up some 8-foot stakes the other day, and there are ribbons on those stakes. And as if you look at the contours and you drive by County Road and look at that field, the back of the abutter's property, I sold him a double lot actually, and we easily can meet the 250-foot setbacks from his house to any solar farm operations over there. But coincidentally, if you go up to that site, you'll see that a 8-foot fence, it's virtually impossible to see any of the solar panels from behind the Sweat's house, because behind the Sweat's house it comes up about 12 feet to his property line, and at that high point on his back property line it drops off 90 feet from that point to Meslonsky Stream. So it's virtually impossible to see solar panels looking behind his house based on the topography, whether there are 20-foot setbacks or 50-foot setbacks. It was my understanding that the planning board would review not only setbacks, but buffer zones, wooded buffer zones, fence heights, fence locations. With my understanding, the planning board's review would go through that process. So I guess my question is, why arbitrarily, without even looking at the property or looking at the contours or the fences that I stuck up along the county road and around the Sweats property, why would arbitrarily change the setbacks when in fact, based on the elevations, can't see solar panels?
So several of us have actually been to the property. I haven't seen the actual fence. I was there obviously before that happened. But the creation of the zoning isn't just for this project.
Correct.
This is for anyone. And you know, so the next solar farm might be next to someone who doesn't have that land contour. And we're trying to protect the residential property owners who bought their home thinking that they were in a country setting and they're going to have kind of an industrial use next door to them that they have to look at. So while it may not apply to your project, it certainly could apply to another property. And I think we're trying to make, to speak to Councillor Thomas's conversation with City Planner Ann Beveridge, rather than just make specific fixes for everyone, just trying to make something uniform that will go into any zone that is rezoned to this solar farm zone.
Okay, and the other consideration is, supporting these solar farms within your own ordinance criteria that's there today, is the fact that these guys are planning on spending $7 million on the county road, of which the tax revenue is going to be between $40,000 and $90,000 a year to the city of Waterville. So you may want to consider that as being a reasonably healthy tax base that supports the mill rate in Waterville and allows us to develop our property. And I'll say it again, if you can't see the panels from the house, it doesn't matter if the panels are 2 feet behind the fence or 50 feet behind the fence. Just should consider that. Thank you.
Seeing that nobody else from the public has stepped forward on this specific item, I will ask for a roll call.
Councilor Morris?
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira? Councilor Oliveira?
Yes.
Councilor Smith?
Yes.
Councilor Mayu?
Yes.
Councilor Foss?
No.
Councilor Frankie?
Yes.
Councilor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Next item on the agenda is Ordinance 144, 2020.
An ordinance providing for amendment to zoning.
Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Claude. We are now up for discussion on amendment to zoning on the Webb Road.
Do I say something now?
Since nobody else seems to be stepping forward, yes, why not? Come right up and introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm Gil Paquette. I work for VHB. I'm a consultant for NextGrid, the applicant for the Webb Road solar project. And I'm just making myself available tonight to answer any questions you might have.
Wonderful, thank you. Councilor Thomas?
I'll just say I took a drive out as much around the area as I could, and I really couldn't see anyone who was, I don't think anyone will even be able to see it out there. So there's a natural buffer of trees, and I don't believe we've had any concerns from any abutters or anything, so I don't see why this project shouldn't move forward.
Councilor Frankie?
You, Claude, speak.
That's you, Claude.
Excuse me, the sound's kind of broken up from time to time.
Sure.
My question is this a commercial project that is in mind?
I didn't hear the last part.
Is it a commercial project?
It is, yes.
Yes.
All right. Then I'd like to ask Mike Roy if he would explain what the change in tax valuation is for the for solar farms. I asked you about this, Mike, before you went on vacation, and I believe you had talked to the city assessor. Do you have that information at your fingertips?
No, I'm sorry, I don't. It's still somewhat of an evolving explanation too, but I think the key is whether it's the solar energy generated is for residential usage or commercial usage. I think if it's on the commercial side, then it's fully taxable, but I'd want to check with Paul Castangwe, our assessor again, Councilor Frankie, before I could answer that more completely.
So if it's on the residential side, it's not fully taxable?
I think that's if you put a solar panel on your house that
Well-
you're using for your own power. I don't think it's if you're generating power for other.
No, it can be also an installation like at the airport, 5-megawatt installation, and if all of the energy generated goes to, I'll just say exempt entities, then it may not be fully taxable. It's a complicated subject on the taxation part, so I'd want to get help before I spend much more. Now,
You don't happen to know the answer, do you?
Maybe I
No,
could ask.
I just wanted to clarify the answer to the question. When I said it was commercial, I misunderstood the question.
No, I think the point being that this could be a substantial increase in the tax base for the city, which could generate substantial revenue as opposed to just being simply the rural assessed value.
Go ahead, sir.
It could be commercial or residential. You have to sign up for the program to get, actually, I don't know why anyone wouldn't, because you get cheaper electricity if you sign up. So even the town could enter into an agreement.
Right.
In terms of the taxes, I do have some information. I know that the state has a program to compensate, I think it's to compensate towns for the portion that might not be taxable. I'm just not sure. I know that they're working on it to make the towns whole with this new program that the PUC has implemented.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Foss?
I'm going to echo my rural residential non-agreement on this. Again, people don't buy houses out in the middle of rural residential to have it populated by solar farms and industrial. They bought that property because it's peaceful and it's 5 minutes from the nearest Hannaford. I just cannot support this.
Any other councilors? I will open it to the public. Is there any members of the public who have a comment on this specific rezone? Check my email. Seeing that there is no further commentary, I will ask for a roll call, Patty.
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor Oliveira?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Mayu?
No.
Counselor Foss?
No.
Counselor Frankie?
Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 5 in favor and 2 opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming. Next item on the agenda is Ordinance 145, 2020.
An ordinance providing for amendment to zoning.
Move to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
You sleeping tonight? Bond talk, you know. Open for discussion. Councilor Foss.
I have spent an extensive amount of time at this property. Mr. and Mrs. Sweat have been gracious enough to let me take some pictures. I've handed out a packet for everybody to view, along with emailed it to everybody, so you have it. Top picture, the first picture that you come to is the very back edge of their property overlooking the proposed solar farm. There is a nice rolling hill there. I've also received from Mr. Sweat the additional pictures that I did not have time to print with the stakes. They are visible from the house. Mr. Sweat has given pictures of that. Second picture is his front yard overlooking the solar farm. The rolling hill again would expose those panels to his view. On the third picture.
I apologize. Did you email those pictures?
Yes, I did.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
The ones with the stakes?
No, but I can.
Thank you.
Yep. The third picture is, again, from the front of his property overlooking. Basically, anything that's mowed is Mr. Sweat's property. The next abutting is the unmowed section. The picture with the truck in it is looking towards the back of his property, okay? And in that picture, there is a stake that will be shown, and I will send those pictures along. The cut-down tree, again, is overlooking overlooking that same field, just different views. You can see clearly that this is that back field. Now, the last picture I want to really point out, the last picture is, it appears that there's a power line running up over the hill. That's just a point of reference for me, just to show you where I'm talking about. But at the base of that hill is actually the Quarry Road trails. Mr. Sweat has indicated that during the wintertime, when there's no foliage on the trees, he can see people over on the Quarry Road. So Quarry Road's gonna be looking at this solar farm. Even with even as described with the drop off towards the river, now you're gonna look at even more panels than what Mr. Sweat is gonna be looking at. They bought a piece of property out there to be 5 minutes from Hannaford, but be in a very quiet setting. They did not buy the piece of property to have a solar farm put up so that they could sit on their deck with a cup of coffee, just like I've said about every other rural residential project, and stare at solar farms. That's what I have to say.
I went out to the property as well. There's no way that you can say they're not going to see the solar farm. And it would be helpful if before the second vote on this, which will occur 2 weeks from now, if an image of the actual solar farm plan could be sent to every city councilor, because it's not until you see that, along with the photos of the property, that you can really get a sense of this project. It's very abstract looking at empty fields, but when you see kind of the plot where these panels are going to be and the immensity of the project, there's no way it's not going to disrupt the quiet enjoyment of a long-time Waterville resident. And you know, you wouldn't let me put a gas station in my front lawn because my neighbors signed up to live in a residential zone and they live there. There's no way this isn't going to devalue the property of these homeowners. But I think what they probably care about from my conversation with them more than that is the disruption of the quiet enjoyment of their home property. And I would ask every city councilor before they take a vote on this, especially the second vote, to ask yourself how you would feel if this was your specific property. This was you and your family living there. You've been there for 20 or 30 years. You've put your sweat into your property, and this is going next door. And I would encourage you, if you have the time, to go out and meet the Sweats. They're great people. I think this is the kind of zoning change that goes beyond a minuscule amount of tax revenue, because I've learned in 6 years here that tax revenues, when we start saying that every project, oh, this is so important to the tax base, that money is spent like that. And it's usually spent on new stuff. So let's leave this family in peace. I'd ask you to go out there and take a look at it, and I'm totally against this project.
Nick.
Yes, Councilor.
I went up there today and met Mr. Sweat, and we walked around the property line. And I listened to his concerns, and I just sort of tried to walk him through how we got to this point. And this was the whole reason for not just blanket saying you can put a solar farm in rural residential, that it should be a case-by-case basis. I also explained to him, you know, I've been through many sort of rezoning things. I think the best example probably would be Trafton Road. I can tell you that is also rural residential. Every single person in the neighborhood was opposed to that. And there was a part of me, I ended up voting in favor of it. At the time, you know, there was a part of me that was opposed to it because I sort of felt like we might end up with another First Park, or that we should try to fill in the center of town before we start developing out on the outskirts of town. But the harsh reality in Waterville is that we need tax base. And so ultimately, after lots of conversations with people, we decided to go ahead and allow that project on Trafton Road to move forward in hopes that we would see some development out there and see some increased tax base out there. We have very little land in Waterville. It's only 15 square miles, and even less than that is land you can actually build on. And you can't stop a project. It's one of the things you have to consider, how it affects the abutters, but that can't necessarily be the reason for putting a stop to the project. And so you got to consider all of the things. And the things in our ordinance, for example, that we just approved, are that the solar farm can't be any closer than 250 feet to the house, or the other factor that would have to be 50 feet from the property line. You're also required in our standards to put up a minimum of a 6-foot tall vegetative barrier, and you have 5 years for it to get up to that height. But so once there's having walked the property, once there's a 6-foot tall hedge line, I don't think you would be able to see the solar panels from his property. I think coming down the road you may see it, but there's also stuff in there about having to have a visual buffer from the street frontage as well. And I'm sure Councillor Foss's concerns have probably played out over and over and over and over and over again in Waterville, because there was a time when it was all farmland. And I'm sure every time somebody wanted to develop something, the neighbors said they didn't want it because they bought in a nice quiet spot, and that's where they, planned out and living out the rest of their life. So, I want to hear from Mr. Sweat and also from Mr. Violet before I make my decision. But I just, those are the things that are sort of going into my thought process when it comes time to actually vote on this.
I just want to offer a quick comment, and we'll go to Councillor Foss. I hear what you're saying, and I myself have had to make decisions on projects I support or don't. Some, in retrospect, I probably shouldn't have, but that should never stop us from looking at things differently and kind of learning from what we do as we go along. And, I don't want to be one of these kind of awful dystopian places where we're so desperate for tax revenue that we just develop every square inch. And I mean, ask Mike Roy about his love of making sure we have trees in the parking lot downtown. These things can be important, and aesthetics are important. And it seems like, I feel like there's no balance. I feel like we approve every rezoning request for every project, for every developer, and I think we need to take a step back a little bit and start thinking about the people who live here and who have lived here and made this city the great city that it is. Yeah, we definitely cannot stop all progress, and we have to make tough decisions. But I think it's time we step back a little bit and really start questioning ourselves a little bit more when we're just so desperate for that extra tax dollar. Ask ourselves, what are we really making the future like here in the city? Councillor Foss.
Our thirst for tax revenue should never be on the backs of our taxpayers. We should look inside of ourselves and inside of our own budget. If we're digging for dollars, we should probably look inward and not outward to the people that have been here for 20 and 30 years. That should never, ever be where we look, especially in this case. I can overlook some other things, and I can probably go with some things, but he's been here since '93. He's not even in my ward. Our thirst for spending has got to be stopped, and we should not put it on the back of the taxpayers.
I will, can I speak?
Yes.
I will just say that the planning board did approve this project with a 9-1 vote after careful consideration. So that's something notable, I would think.
Councilor Mayhew?
Yeah, I want to reiterate what Council Foss said and what the mayor said. I've made this point a number of times, and I'm the first one to step up to the plate and say, you know, we need to have more tax revenue. But again, when you look at rural residential and you take a drive out there and you see the rolling hills and you see the tree lines and you see the fields and you see the anemones of what a rural residential is to a resident that's been a taxpayer for so many years. And this land is pristine land. This is land that's very rare. Again, you know, we make reference to the square mile radius of Waterville. This is pristine land. There's hardly any of it left. There really is in Waterville. There's hardly any of this stuff left. And yeah, we do need to develop the proper, you know, the proper property that we can. You know, solar, I'm completely behind solar. I applaud the work of the solar committee all the way around, but I do think it should be limited to city-owned property. We can still take advantage of that tax revenue and reap the rewards of it. But when it comes, you just got to take a step back and take a look, like the mayor says. In every reference to what a residential taxpayer is saying and pleading for the aesthetics and the serenity of where they live. It's the reason why they're there. They they live there, they've worked there, they've retired there. They want to pass on there, and it's just that to me is something you just can't tamper with, and that's why I oppose this.
With the current zoning, they could put a trailer park in there. Something to consider as well.
Yes. Councilor Thomas brought that up to me in a phone call, and I said, yeah, that's why we should absolutely make sure that we look at all of our zoning to make sure those kinds of things aren't happening. You know, really, zoning is to find the highest and best use for each piece of land and to set it that way, to make the city the way we want it. Any other councilors? All right, Mr. Sweat is here. We'll give you the mic.
Well, first I'd like to thank you for listening to me. Thank you, Eric, for coming by today. Rick, you above and beyond, and you're not even my man. Thank you so much. Mr. Mayor, thank you for coming to see us. And this little lady right here, Kathy Weeks, she was the only one on the planning board that stood behind us. She stood for the homeowner. That's what you guys have got to do. You've got to stand up for the homeowner. I've been out there since 1993, and I'm proud of the house I built there. It's not a $500,000 house or a $700,000 or $1 million home behind me, but it's my house. I've got the best police department, the best public works, the best fire department. And I've never met you folks before, but I'm telling you right now, now I can tell you that I do. And nobody picks, I have no city water, no city sewer. I'm just a middle-of-the-road farm boy, mill worker that retired after 42 years, and that's where I want to live my life. And it is spectacular land. The farmer that hazed that property turned over all the dirt, and that's certified organic for his farm down on the West River Road. That's another thing. And we don't want it littered with a solar factory. Go by Washington Street, folks, and tell me how you like that, how you like the looks of that with their barbed wire fence, and it's disgusting. I don't know. But you got to take care of the people. You guys have got to take care of the homeowner. You've done a heck of a job with businesses in the city. Everybody's come into Waterville. You're right. Spectacular. Spectacular. Done great. But there's only a few of us homeowners left now, and you've got to help us out. Our taxes are high. Yeah, that's right. But we love living in this city. I'm a mile to the hospital, Shop and Save on one side, the doctor's office, wherever I want to go, it's right there. I'm so centrally located. And we have wildlife there, eagles, deer, I mean, we've got it all. It's spectacular. And how they want to do that solar farm in there, and Eric, thank you for pushing it back a few feet, because they were out there after you left and they put some stakes up where it's going to be. Thank you for at least doing that much. But that gentleman there's got the map, and what you see in the red is all solar farm. It's going to come right up behind my back, my side, 200 feet from my house, but so what? And you say I can't see it? I live on a hill. There's no way I can't not see it. I mean, come on. Jeez. I see that no matter what. And that's about all I have to say. I'm not a very good public speaker because usually I start rolling and spit and sputter, but I'd like to thank you very much for listening to me and taking your time. And like Rick, you're a godsend. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Catherine?
I'd kind of like to echo what our mayor has said. I have been out to the sweats several times. Mr. Vigu would have to go to California to get the redwoods to put up so that the residents would not see this, number one. I agree with what you have said about there's very few on this council that really cares about the residents. And I know we have a couple that would probably vote to send money to North Korea tonight. The Sweats, they have been longtime residents. They have worked in this city. And for us to just think about the few dollars that this would bring, which we know we spend money like water. Oh, by the way, we did make Boston news tonight on the Howie Carr show. Somebody did call in from Waterville, Maine. In the past 3 months, we have lost 15 businesses in this city. And we don't seem to be concerned about that, but we are concerned about ruining this beautiful, beautiful land that this couple bought for rural residential many years ago. And now at a whim, it's fine for Mr. Violet or whoever to go out and take that away. And yes, at the trails, they can see into that field. So they'll get a beautiful view of solar panels. I had gone by the solar farm that Colby owns, of course, and you can just see the weeds and everything just growing up amongst the panels. So I am begging you, if you are truly in this seat caring about residents, you need to vote this one down. Thank you.
I have a public comment here that came in through the email service from Phil Bofia, Ward 2. I am all for solar, but it comes a time when we cannot sacrifice our constituents' property values and serenity for the sake of tax dollars. Let's preserve the integrity of our neighborhoods.
Amen.
That's from Phil. Are there any other members of the public?
What happened to Mr. Violet?
He headed that way.
Was he done?
I think he left.
All right, there will be a second vote on this, so I'd just like to remind everybody that all of these ordinances will be back in 2 weeks. So,
There's a second vote unless it fails.
unless it fails, yeah. I think we're ready for a roll call, Patty.
Councilor Morris?
No.
Councilor Oliveira?
Yes.
Councilor Smith?
Yes.
Councilor Mayu?
No.
Councilor Foss?
No.
Councilor Frankie?
Yes.
Councilor Thomas?
Yes.
So it's 4 in favor and 3 opposed.
Now, to change a zone, doesn't that need a 5 vote? I believe that Billy is, I believe to change zoning, we need,
Well, it takes 2 votes.
but I think you need 5. Can we ask Billy that?
We'll get an answer before the next meeting.
I'm just trying to recall.
Amending the zoning ordinance takes 5 votes for some things, I'm not.
Amending the zoning ordinance,
Oh,
but
so that would
not,
be for
rezoning a
not
property.
rezoning. Okay.
Ann is on,
True.
So that might make more sense, Eric.
wouldn't Ann know?
Ann, do you know?
Yeah, Ann should know, yes, of course.
Trying to figure out how to unmute herself.
Ann Beveridge,
And you're muted.
you're muted.
Okay. The ordinance says any amendment to provisions of this ordinance must be approved by 2/3 of the members of the city council present. So I believe this means that a map change is a provision of the ordinance.
Anybody understand that?
Yeah, she believes that it does need the 5 votes.
We'll have to get Bill's.
Why don't we get an opinion from Bill Lee on that, so we know that we're exactly where we should be in terms of the.
Whether this comes
Right.
back on the next one
Whether
or
it comes back or not will be
Yeah,
determined.
great. Well, so go ahead, Ann.
This is in the zoning ordinance that I'm reading to you. Section 7.1.5 of the zoning ordinance.
So this is an amendment to Article 2.
There's no reason to get caught up on this.
Yeah, so I think we'll figure that out. It may or may not be on our agenda in 2 weeks. Well,
Well, and then if it takes 5, the question is, does it just take 5 votes once or
Right.
twice?
Right.
Or
We'll get an opinion and get it out to
I
everyone.
would assume we get to vote on it again, and then if it doesn't. But
okay. Next is Ordinance 146, 2020.
An ordinance providing for amendment to the traffic ordinance.
Move to adopt.
Second.
And discussion. Counselor Foss?
So I was at planning board last night, and they did an excellent job of trying to figure this out, and how to word this. And it was after a good half hour, 45 minutes of talking about this one topic, they realized that the 34 pound, the poundage was not going to take care of the problem, which is why they turned it down last night.
Do you want to just table it?
I would, what's that?
You want to table it?
Well, what I want to do is, if we can table it so that I can come up with the proper language, and then add that amendment when it comes back up. That's, yeah, I would move that we table this for the time being.
Second.
Postpone it to the next one?
Yeah, let's table till next meeting.
Is this a derivative of the High Street issue?
Yes.
Correct.
Thank you, then
Do you
yes.
vote on the table?
Yes.
Yeah, all in favor of tabling?
Do we need to do
call.
a
Oh,
roll call on that as well? Counselor Morris?
Yes?
Counselor Oliveira?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Mayu?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
Yes.
Counselor Frankie?
Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you, Ann.
Okay. Resolution 147, 2020.
A resolution providing for approval of bid award Alphon Municipal Pool Project.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Discussion? Do we need to discuss this anymore? Everybody good with the discussion we had earlier tonight on this?
Yep.
All right,
All set?
please.
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor Oliveira?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Mayu?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
Yes.
Counselor Frankie?
No.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Resolution 148, 2020.
A resolution providing for authorizing issuance of a marijuana retail license to Mainly Genetics Flowers Pharmacy.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
All set?
All set.
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor Oliveira?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Mayu?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
Yes.
Counselor Frankie?
Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Resolution 149, 2020.
A resolution providing for authorizing issuance of a marijuana retail license to Maple Valley Farms.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor Oliveira?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Mayu?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
Yes.
Counselor Frankie?
Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Resolution 150, 2020.
A resolution providing for authorizing issuance of a marijuana retail license to Bobby's Buds.
Move to adopt.
Second.
I like that one. I think we're ready for a roll call.
Yep.
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor Oliveira?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Mayu?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
Yes.
Counselor Frankie?
Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Resolution 151, 2020.
A resolution providing for authorizing issuance of a marijuana retail license to Green Thumb Organics.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor Oliveira?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Mayu?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
Yes.
Counselor Frankie?
Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Resolution 152, 2020.
A resolution providing for issuance of a victualer's license to Peter Vitello, doing business as Swirls.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Discussion. Does anyone know what this
Do we
is?
know what
Yeah, I was gonna
Swirls
say,
is?
what do you
Is
know
he here?
what this is?
Yeah, what is it?
I think it's another restaurant. I don't
Wow.
believe he's here.
Okay.
It's fantastic.
All right. Roll call, please.
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor Oliveira?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Mayu?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
Yes.
Counselor Frankie?
Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Resolution 153, 2020.
A resolution providing for referral to the planning board.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Discussion.
This is about being Airbnbs.
I think, looks like it.
Is that what? Go ahead. Is that what it is?
Short-term rental is another name for Airbnb.
Okay.
We're starting to get more and more questions, complaints
Yeah.
Yes,
from
we are.
these places throughout the city.
Yep.
Okay.
And
That's all I did.
I think we're realizing, even though we're a little bit behind the curve, we got to step up and start having some kind of understanding about where it can happen and where it maybe shouldn't.
Heard about it this weekend, so, yep.
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 All right. Roll call, please.
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor Oliveira?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Mayu?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
Yes.
Counselor Frankie?
Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Next is Order 154, 2020.
An order providing for acceptance of a Keep Maine Healthy 2020 Municipal COVID-19 Awareness Campaign Award.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor Oliveira?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Mayu?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
Yes.
Counselor Frankie?
Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Should have said this before. Thanks, Chief. Yeah.
I move to take a 5-minute recess before we get into this next one.
Okay. I'm gonna call a recess for 5 minutes.
It's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Welcome back to this regularly scheduled meeting of the Waterville City Council. We will pick up where we left off, which is at Order 155, 2020.
An order providing for appropriation of municipal and school operating budgets for the period of July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021.
Move to adopt.
Second.
And open for discussion.
Mike, I have a question.
Oh, Claude has a hand up.
Okay.
Let's go to him first.
I'd like to move that we table this until the next meeting. We still are waiting for budget updates from the state in terms of revenue sharing. We're not quite sure what the school funding for next year is going to be, or what school operations are going to be. I think we should, I'm proposing that we table until we get more information to make an intelligent decision on the budget.
I would second that.
Discussion on the motion?
Can I just have a question from Mike. Mike, when do we have to, I mean, I know if the city has to get tax bills out, and I know that process takes time. I mean, when do we have to get tax bills out in order we don't get in trouble with our cash flow? And my other question is, I think the only discussion in the budget at this point is about spending. It's not about the mill rate. So if the budget discussion did drag out in terms of what spending is in and out of the budget, could we still, with the understanding that the mill rate is going to stay constant, would we still be able to start the process, or do you need a vote before we start preparing tax bills?
We certainly should not delay any much beyond August 1st in taking a final vote on the budget. Of course, it takes 2 votes. So I want to just encourage you tonight to take a first vote. You can take as long as you want to do a second vote, but taking a first vote allows us then to get some of the answers to the questions you may have. So after August 1st, presents real problems for us to getting the tax bills out, because the assessor has to do his work in setting the mill rate, go to print with all the tax bills, and make sure they get out in time for people to make their first quarter payment, which is end of September, beginning of October. And so it's really very tough for us if it happens much later than August 1st. So you have a meeting on the 21st, and then that first meeting in August, whatever that first Tuesday is. The 4th. 4th?
I think it's the 4th, yeah.
I would say the 4th would be the absolute deadline. So you could take a first vote July 17th and a second vote August 4th, but if there are a lot of questions, why don't we deal with them now with a first vote as much as we can? If you're not satisfied on the July 17th, then we can wait till August 4th. But we're not going to know, we are not going to know by August 4th anything more about state revenue sharing than we do today. The Governor's Forecasting Committee meets in August, and I think that's more towards the end of August. So we're not going to have the benefit of that forecasting thing. What I can say is that our revenue sharing for this, for last year, the year that ended June 30, came in $92,000 more than what we budgeted. It is surprising. We collected more revenue sharing than what we thought. On motor vehicle excise, we're actually $9,000 short of what we budgeted for motor vehicle excise. On this sheet that we passed out, I gave an estimate of $15,000, and now it's only $9,000. The shortfall for motor vehicle for next year, I'm estimating at $98,000. Now I'm beginning to wonder if that is way too high an estimate. I don't know that we're going to know anything more a month from now about motor vehicle excise or state revenue sharing than we know right today.
I mean, I'm going to hazard a guess, knowing my own situation. So, I mean, I'm collecting unemployment, right? But I'm getting an extra $600 a month from the federal government, or a week from the federal government that I'm paying income tax on. So that might be why our revenues actually weren't as bad, because people are paying income tax on money they didn't, that was coming through unemployment. I mean, that's just a guess off the top of my head, but I kind of agree. I mean, I don't know. Anything the state says is a shot in the dark. It's a complete and utter shot in the dark. They can say anything, and I don't think it's going to have any more meaning 2 weeks from now than it does right now. I mean, the only question, they're not discussing lowering the percentage, right? It's going to be 3.75.
It's our share of state revenue sharing is going from 3.25 to 3.75. Of course, the question is this pot smaller? Is that 3.75 smaller? Right. Total dollar-wise than the 3.25? Who knows?
I mean, I certainly wouldn't have we had this discussion last year. I think most counselors weren't comfortable voting on the budget without more sort of concrete answers. I've always been on the only vote that matters is the last vote, as far as I'm concerned, but I also understand if other people aren't comfortable with that.
Is there, Councilor Frankie?
Well, the city manager is not asking for a mill increase in the budget that he's proposed. So it seems to me that it wouldn't make any difference whether we approve the budget today or in the middle of September as far as the mill increase or the mill rate being the same. So I frankly don't see why the manager's so eager to uncertain water in terms of the overall budget. That's why I think we should keep putting it off until we start to get some real numbers so we can make some real decisions.
I can answer that. It's because if the bills don't go out, we don't have any cash coming in. And so just because there's no mill increase doesn't mean that we are not, that we can pay the bills.
Right. Legally, you have to wait to send out bills until we approve a budget.
Right.
Correct. The budget has to come before the bills are sent out.
Right, and we'll run into serious cash flow issues if we don't start collecting our first quarter tax payments.
Right.
One question I have, I'd like to just get into a specific here, and I've talked to Councilor Thomas about this, and Chief, I would just like your thoughts on this.
Just with the motion to table is on the floor.
Oh, the motion, never mind. Any further discussion on the motion to table? Okay, we'll take a roll call on the tabling.
Councilor Morris?
No.
Councilor Oliveira?
So the motion to table this is like we're gonna talk about this in the next meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so a motion to table it, yes.
Councilor Smith?
No.
Councilor Mayu?
Yes.
Councilor Foss?
Yes.
Councilor Frankie?
Yes.
Councilor Thomas?
No.
Vote is 4 in favor and 3
Wow.
opposed.
Didn't see that coming.
So it's tabled.
All right. Next is Resolution 156, 2020.
A resolution providing for appointing Steve Crate to the Planning Board.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilor Morris?
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira?
Yes.
Councilor Smith?
Yes.
Councilor Mayu?
Yes.
Councilor Foss?
Yes.
Councilor Frankie?
Yes.
Councilor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
And next is Resolution 157, 2020.
A resolution providing for referral to the Planning Board.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Councilor Morris?
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira?
Yes.
Councilor Smith?
Yes.
Councilor Mayu?
Yes.
Councilor Foss?
Yes.
Councilor Frankie?
Yes.
Councilor Thomas?
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
That one made sense to me.
I don't suppose there's any counselor updates tonight.
Could I just add something before we move on? The deadline for requesting an absentee ballot electronically or by telephone is Thursday at the close of business. The governor's order has extended absentee voting in person until Election Day, including Election Day. We would urge everyone who is interested in voting to consider voting by absentee ballot. We have certain limits for health and safety purposes. The gathering limit for the polling place is 50 people, including staff. So we have about 25 staff, so that means there'll only be 25 voters within the facility during any one time during Election Day. So anyone who opts to wait until Election Day should plan for a wait in line. We can only move so many folks through. Don't know what the weather is going to be, if it's raining or hot or whatever, so people should plan accordingly. And I would just ask everyone to be patient and understanding. It's, as we work through the process, it's certainly been challenging to try to figure out how to navigate through it all. We've also installed a drop box outside of City Hall. It's a secure drop box so that voters who have requested an absentee ballot can return the ballot. It's kind of like a mailbox. It opens up and it goes in, and we're only the city staff, city clerk's office, have keys to that. So we would encourage voters to take advantage of that. They don't have to come into City Hall to return their ballots. Thank you.
No manager's report.
Can you share how many absentee ballots have come in already?
We have around 1,000 that have been returned. We have about 600 that are still out there. Unheard of for a primary in the summer.
And Thursday's the last day.
Thursday's the last day to request by telephone or electronically.
Okay.
Trump 2020.
All right.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
You want to take a roll call?